Welcome on Texas Football. I'm Bobby Burton, your host, joined by Gerry Hamilton. Special edition here of On Texas Football this afternoon. Gerry, some words just coming out from Brandon Brown, young man out of the Melbourne, Florida area, has committed to LSU. Big commitment for the Tigers. Not great news yet again for the Longhorns. Of course, the tie here for LSU being former Texas defensive line coach Bo Davis. He committed to Texas originally with Bo Davis as the defensive line coach at Texas. Davis in the offseason takes the job at LSU. Brown, at the end of the day, decides to go to LSU. What are your thoughts on that? And, we're going to talk a little bit about where this leaves Texas and where Texas goes from here. But for right now, what do you think about this commitment for Brandon Brown?
Well, yeah, we've said this before. Bo Davis was on Brandon Brown early. It didn't mean he didn't have offers, but early when some college coaches were questioning his height, his frame, his size, even schools inside the state like the University of Florida, where he's had multiple family members play college football. That's why he's not going to Florida. So Bo Davis believed in their son. He believed in Brandon Brown. He believed in him at a time where Byron Murphy, as a 6'5", 295-pound defensive tackle, was dominant. And that left a very good message from Bo Davis on, I like you. Here's the reasons why, and this is how I can develop you. You're watching it with your own eyes with Byron Murphy and T'Vondre Sweat. And I think that resonated. But I think within the family, what resonated with the family, again, was that Bo Davis had a really good relationship with Brandon, but he also believed in Brandon. Again, when some schools wondered if he was too small, didn't have enough height, what have you from a frame standpoint. And Bo Davis was telling everybody around, Brandon, the coaching staff at O'Galley, the family, no, they're all wrong. Here's Byron Murphy. This is why everybody's wrong. This is what I can do with you.
We're going to now take it to a different place and talk about where does Texas go from here, Gerry? Because it's one thing to lose a recruit. They've lost a couple in a row now that were key. DeCorian Moore last night, Brandon Brown today. What's going on with Texas recruiting, in your opinion, and where do the Longhorns need to go from here?
Yeah, I think one there on the defensive front, this one's a little different for me because Kenny Baker got in late. They want to recruit nationally. I don't think they casted a wide enough net early in this cycle. And I say that because a kid like Chase Sims at Richmond and Randall, when you talked to him, you knew Texas was a place he would want to be. Texas offered, didn't bring him in for an official, though, so that's not really an offer, and he commits to A&M. So they lost out on their national prospects. Josiah Sharma commits to Oregon. He had told multiple schools he was going to Texas. People in our industry actually had quotes on him going to Texas. Then he changed his mind and went to Oregon the morning of his decision. But then there's Kevin Wynn, who Texas was coming from behind on, but they did a good job getting him on campus. He goes to FSU. Myron Charles, who FSU is the leader all time. We told everybody Texas would be the number 2 there. Texas was the challenger for Myron Charles. At the end of the day, he stayed closer to home, went to FSU, that long-standing relationship with Odell Haggins. Then you had Zion Williams didn't make it to campus. Now you have Brandon Brown. So the top guys on the board, those top 5 guys on the defensive line, look, then they struck out on all of them. So they're back to the drawing board there. Wide receiver, DeCorian Moore, huge loss for me in Texas because I thought he was the must-get recruit in this class as far as, an offensive side of the ball and the top guy in Texas I thought Texas could get. And I think the kid could be a great player. That one hurts a little bit in a different way, right? Because Texas has a serious need at the defensive line right now that they're going to have to either go to the portal, late evaluations, try to flip some guys. Wide receiver, there's still a pathway to a really good class of wide receivers for Texas, and they have so much success in the portal with Steve Sarkisian that that's going to happen if they need to go down that path once again. But DeCorian Moore was a recruitment. I think talking about the D linemen, after the coaching change, Kenny Baker coming in late, trying to recruit these guys nationally in a short amount of time, you didn't sit there and circle these guys as recruitments that you thought Texas should win. You were hopeful they could win some. DeCorian Moore was a recruitment that was circled that Texas should win, and they did not. So that's the difference for me.
Yeah, I'm interested here because that's 2 different pieces of the puzzle, right?
Yeah.
The other piece of the puzzle is this. I agree with you. Texas can stomach a loss at wide receiver with DeCorey Moore, even though we think he's a special player. Okay. But they can stomach the losses at wide receiver. They've got other big-time wide receivers, maybe not as big-time, frankly, as DeCorey Moore, who's the number one ranked receiver in the country, even though they're 5 stars. So let's be clear on this. It is what it is. The problem that I'm seeing, though, is with the defensive line, you're talking about, guys, that is a position of priority.
Yeah.
Right. And so I can understand why, okay, we can stomach and deal with a loss at wide receiver, even if it's an elite, super elite prospect. But the complete miss at defensive line is a complete go back to the drawing board situation.
Yes.
It's not okay, let's fix this with patchwork. It's going to have to be a complete redo of sorts here with the Brandon Brown.
Because you don't want to put that much pressure on yourself in the portal, Bobby, at the D-line position.
Right.
Because there's just not enough high-level guys. Not that Tia Savea is not a good player, Bill Norton and Jermaine Lole, if he's healthy. But there's one Dominic Williams in the portal last year at D-line. There may be 1 or 2 of those level guys. That is a lot of pressure to put on yourself to win those, because the leverage of those guys in the portal in the spring is enormous.
Well, and let's be clear, Texas wasn't willing to match the level that some others were for those elite defensive linemen in the portal last year. And the reason why is because it would have blown up the numbers on the actual roster itself at Texas. And so it feels like that is a situation right now that needs an answer, frankly. And I don't know that Texas has it quite yet and hasn't figured out. So we've got to follow that and figure out where Texas is going to go from here, because that's the question we're asking ourselves this afternoon. Where does Texas go from here? We don't know at defensive tackle. At wide receiver, the difference there, Jerry, is with the loss of Moore, I think you and I agree, they need a speed guy in this class. Because Jamie French and Khalil Lockett, as good of players as they are, you would not categorize them as true speed guys. DeCorey Moore is a speed guy. So now can Texas get back in and actually dominate on someone like Kelshawn Johnson out of Hitchcock or Tanook Hines, both of whom announced on July 8th? Or is it too little too late in those recruitments?
Yeah, I think that's the question. And we said this on Coffee and Football this morning. If Texas makes a push at one of those guys, and it's a late push, from July 5th to July 8th on a Kelshawn Johnson or Tanook Hines, and one of those guys says yes to Texas, that's a really good sign, because that's how badly they want to wear the Texas uniform, play at Texas in Steve Sarkisian's scheme. But that's a steep hill to climb right now, because all these kids know, they understand recruiting. They understand it's all on social media now. There's not really any more secrets in recruiting anymore. Everybody kind of knows where they're at on the pecking order and knows what's going on around them. So one of those 2 kids, if Texas makes a push, would have to be very comfortable saying, okay, I know DeCorey Moore was the number 1 guy. I'm the number 2 guy, but I still doesn't matter. I'm still going to go to Texas. When other schools, such as like Texas A&M with Kelshawn Johnson or USC and Notre Dame, have been pushing for Tanook Hines all the time.
I want to go back and mention something. We said struck out. They are still, Texas still recruiting heavily DJ Sanders out of Belleville.
Yes.
I don't want to forget that or miss that. We were talking about the national prospects outside the state of Texas and where they were at in that situation. So our apologies there for sure, because it wasn't meant to not mention DJ at all.
Right. Yeah, we're just talking about the national state guy.
Yeah, absolutely. So the question there that I have now is the rest of this week and next week, Jerry. There are a number of commitments coming tomorrow. Texas has Cade Phillips, the defensive back out of Hightower. They also have Lamont Rogers out of Mesquite Horn, big offensive lineman. Riley Pettijohn, the linebacker out of McKinney. All 3 of those guys set to announce tomorrow. Then early next week, you mentioned both Tanook Hines and Kelshawn Johnson already. Well, don't forget about Nick Townsend, the tight end that Texas has been really recruiting hard out of Spring Decaney. And then we have other guys. We mentioned DJ Sanders. He could announce at any time. Nathan Tillman could announce at any time. You know, what should we expect? Is Texas probably going to go 1 for 3 tomorrow at best with Cade Phillips, the safety, Riley Pettijohn, the linebacker, as well as Lamont Rogers, the big offensive lineman? Is that's what it looks like to me right now from, looking far away? I don't talk to these guys individually. Does that sound right, though, to you?
I think that's where things have been trending. Yeah, headed into, your last 24 hours here before an announcement. So that's where it looks. I mean, the thing with Cade Phillips, just going through those real quick. Texas or LSU. I think Texas is where the family prefers. LSU, Corey Raymond was recruiting him exclusively at corner, and I think that had some appeal to Cade. But I think the rest of everything else with Texas, giving him a shot at corner if it doesn't work out, safety, I think that plus the academics really appeals to the family. We'll see tomorrow when he announces, though, right? Because LSU is going corner, corner, corner. Then with Lamont Rogers, he really likes Missouri, as you said, likes the offensive line coach. He really has a great relationship. That guy's been on him a long time. But the key there is the mom okay with the distance from home? If she is, good chance Missouri's the pick. If not, then does that mean a Texas or an Oklahoma or even a Texas A&M becomes the pick? Florida State's kind of the outlier there. The dad lives in Vicksburg, Mississippi. He didn't make many of the official visits. So that's kind of an outlier in that recruitment. But I think as long as the mom's okay with the distance from home, I think a lot of colleges think Missouri's going to end up being the pick for Lamont Rogers. Then with Riley Pettijohn, I think Ohio State, USC, it looks like the out-of-state programs are ahead of Texas and Texas A&M going into this decision tomorrow. We'll see what he has to say. Those are both scheduled around 1 p.m.
All right. So that's interesting. I look at it this way. Phillips has been one of the top safeties, if not the top safety, defensive back on the board for Texas from the get-go. Period. Full stop. That's one of those guys that's an elite player that Texas wants. Rogers is interesting because a lot of the recruiting services don't have him ranked as highly as some of the other guys at Texas. I watch his film. I think he's as good as just about any of them. Athletically, you watch him play basketball, moves extraordinarily well. If Missouri gets him, that's a big pickup for the Tigers. Pettijohn is more of the recruitment that makes me question a little bit about what's going on there. Because at one point he was thought to be Texas's to lose.
Correct.
At no point was Lamont Rogers considered that way necessarily. Correct. So Pettijohn is in that situation, Jerry. What happened there for him to maybe look elsewhere other than Texas?
I think it's a couple of interesting factors there. So the question was, when Bo Barnes committed to Texas, would him and Pettijohn go to the same school? And I think obviously that's trending no. And then I think the other thing was Texas bringing in Madden Faramo and really setting their sights on Madden Faramo, who's been considered a Notre Dame lean over competition. Then Texas has become the competition there. So I think both those things combined, I think kind of brought some questions into play there within the Pettijohn circle. And I think that's been tough for Texas to come back from on that one.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for Texas to come back from a little of these guys. But I want to so there's that sounds like so much downer news, right? That's the problem right now. I think you need to sit back and look at where Texas really is from a recruiting perspective. They feel really good at offensive line right now. They've got the two running backs, 2 of the 3 running backs they wanted. They got two of the 4. They got a situation at tight end where if Nick Townsend dominoes, they've done about as good as you're going to do anywhere in the nation on that. The 2 defensive ends we've talked about are as good as they wanted. I mean, those are the 2 they wanted. Bo Barnes already in the fold at linebacker. You look at the defensive back, Caleb Chester's a guy they wanted from the very outset. Steve Sarkisian has not backed off of A-list guys, right? And so
for 3 years.
For 3 so I think that the question that we're all struggling with when we ask, like, where does Texas go from here, is we don't see a clear path today,
right,
for them to get there. But will a clear path ultimately emerge in a month or a week or 2? That's a fair question, right? Because there's a lot of things that can happen between now and December.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that can happen. The key for me right now for Texas is winning the recruitments you're maybe expected to win, although some Texas fans will be like, what does that mean at this point? But a Cade Phillips, a Nick Townsend. I think in the college coaches world, both those guys, people think they're going to Texas. We'll see what they announce, though. But if you win a couple of those, you're supposed to. Texas is pretty good spot for Nick Brooks, right? But that one's not going to go till late August, early September. Texas is in a pretty good spot for Jamie French. He doesn't commit till August 30th. See what happens with Khalid Lockett, a couple of the other guys that maybe they try to make a push for coming up here. But it's not out of the realm of possibility if Texas kind of goes on a little run here. They're not sitting there come November 1st with a number 8 ranked, 9 ranked class in the country. And then it comes down to, what are you adding to that? Last year, Aaron Butler, Xavier Filsaime were senior year offers. Wardell Mack was a flip. Obviously, Filsaime was an offer and flip. You had 3 guys that didn't decide till senior year. I think that's going to happen earlier for this class. Then you had Ty Anthony Smith, who flipped from the coaching carousel. If Texas can get on a little run here and win some of the ones they maybe lead for, or we know they've led for, as they get close to these announcements, then Texas is going to be sitting there with the 12th ranked class in the country, right in that area, maybe even up to 9. We'll see. But then you're sitting there, and if you flip anybody, you're sitting there where you still can have a strong finish with another good season on the field, and there's senior year offers to be made for guys that are probably really good players that Texas was going to try to get in on coming up in October.
Yeah, and I will say this. If Sark has a thought process of, hey, I'm not going to overspend, so to speak, in the high school ranks for guys that aren't worth it, then they're going to do more in the portal.
Yes.
That's what ultimately what happened, because that money's not going to go unspent. Texas doesn't get rewarded for not using the money, right?
Right.
And so I feel like that's what people need to realize. There is a little bit of a give and take overall from this process. All right, Jerry, I feel like the last week or so has been turned upside down a little bit from a Texas recruiting perspective. I really, really do, because the number of the guys really, I mean, Brandon Brown today is one that was kind of expected from the perspective of no longer being in the Texas class. Decorium Moore was not, as we talked about. So it's a little bit of shell shock for Texas fans that expect Texas to be the choice. Texas finishing second a lot right now. And I'm interested long-term what that really looks like and what that really means. Is Texas being used as a launch point by some people? Maybe, but I didn't get that feeling on any of these recruitments. I thought Texas was genuinely in there. They got to find a way, though. Steve Sarkisian has to find a way to not finish second, because second recruiting might as well be 6th.
Yeah,
that's the reality of it,
especially at premium positions.
Yeah, fair, especially at premium position. All right, that's going to do it for this afternoon. Again, Brandon Brown, no longer a Texas Longhorn commit. He's off. But for Gerry Hamilton, I'm Bobby Burton. This has been On Texas Football. Hook 'em.